Tomorrow we lock her in. Those were the first words that hit me like a brick to the back of the head. I wasn't asleep. I wasn't even close. I was sitting on the edge of the guest bed, hands pressed flat to my thighs, staring at the line of light under the door. Through that thin crack, my daughter-in-law's whisper slithered down the hall like smoke. Tomorrow, Sarah said, calm as reading a grocery list. We lock her in. There was no shock in my son's answer. No, that's too much. No, she's my mother. Not even an uncomfortable sigh. Just the quiet creak of the floorboards as they walked away together, the kind of silence that meant agreement. I sat there in the dark and counted my breaths. In, out, in, out. My suitcase was already half-packed. I'd started folding clothes after dinner, not because I planned to run, not yet, but because something in the air told me to be ready. Like the way the birds go silent before a storm. Like the way your bones ache the day before rain. 2 months earlier I had moved into Andrew's house. My small place had become too heavy to manage after my hip surgery. He'd said, "You'll be better here, Mom. We'll take care of you." I believed him. I sold my cottage. I wired the money to my account. He offered to invest it the smart way. And I didn't ask questions because I didn't want to sound ungrateful or suspicious. But love isn't measured in guest rooms and promises. It's measured in tone and patience and whether someone refills your cup without making you feel like a burden. Tonight I ate alone at the kitchen counter while they were out just an hour, Sarah said, setting down plastic containers of leftovers. It wasn't the leftovers that bothered me. It was the way she checked the time when I asked how her day had been. Like even a few seconds of conversation with me was a problem she needed to solve. They came home after 10. I stayed in my room until I heard them go upstairs. I had just cracked the door to let the cat slip in when I heard the whisper. "She's getting slower," Sarah said. And she asked about the money again. Then, "We'll handle it tomorrow." Her voice was smooth, practiced. Handling a package. Handling trash. The house settled. Their footsteps faded. I didn't cry. I don't cry easily. Not anymore. But my hands shook as I pulled the suitcase from under the bed and slid it onto the quilt. I folded my blue cardigan. Andrew always said it made me look old, and tucked it beside my nightgown. I added my passport, my medical card, my papers, and the envelope, the one I wasn't meant to find. I'd been hunting for batteries in the kitchen drawer last week when I saw it. Thick white stock, my name neatly printed on the front, no return address. Inside were copies of things I hadn't recognized at first. Forms with my name, my signature that wasn't mine, transfers, insurance claims. The handwriting mimicked my loops and spacing, but the slant was wrong. The D in Dorothy had an extra flourish. The J in Jordan hooked the wrong way. Someone had practiced me. I'd slid it all back without a sound. That night I stared at the ceiling and replayed small, ordinary moments that suddenly snapped into new shapes. The hard push to sell my house. The way Andrew took every call with the financial advisor. How quickly Sarah organized my pills and tidied up my folders. The whisper tonight wasn't the beginning. It was the last line of a plan they'd been unrolling for months. At 12:43, I opened the front door and stepped outside with my shoes in one hand and my suitcase in the other. The neighborhood was too clean for me. Identical houses, quiet cars without dust, sidewalks without cracks. I didn't leave a note. What would I write? "Thank you for your hospitality. Please don't lock me in the guest room tomorrow." I paused at the end of the walkway and looked back. The house where my son lived, where my place at the table had slowly disappeared, looked peaceful as a magazine picture. Then I turned and walked toward the street. The suitcase felt heavier with every step. Not from clothes but from shame. Nothing is heavier than shame when you're 78 and the child you fed and bathed and taught to tie his shoes is the one planning to put you away like a winter coat. The bus stop was 2 blocks down. I sat on the metal bench at Cypress and Maple, shoes finally on, coat zipped. Not for warmth, the night was soft with early fall, but for the feeling of being held together. A porch light across the street blinked on, then off. No one came out. The last bus would be here in 12 minutes, if the schedule hadn't changed. I thought about going back, knocking on the door saying I misunderstood. I'm tired. But I hadn't misunderstood. The whisper had been clear. Tomorrow we lock her in. And Andrew's silence had been louder than any shout. Agreement. Consent. Son to wife, okay. The bus groaned up to the curb, mostly empty. The driver glanced at me in the mirror. "Anywhere particular?" he asked. "Downtown," I said. "Near the old library." He nodded and pulled away. Streetlights stuttered through the windows, little flashes like thoughts. "She forged it. They want me gone." I didn't count the turns. I watched the city smear into a watery ribbon, and let the hum of the engine drown out the part of me that still tried to make excuses for him. 20 minutes later I stepped onto pavement I hadn't walked in years. The hotel I remembered was gone, replaced by a bright glass box. I wheeled my suitcase 3 more blocks until I found a motor court tucked between a gas station and an all-night diner. The woman at the desk didn't ask questions. The room smelled like bleach and something older, something permanent. I locked the door and set the suitcase on a chair. My phone was blank. No missed calls. No messages. Of course not. Maybe they hadn't realized I was gone. Maybe they had and chose not to ask where I'd gone. The hardest part wasn't the whisper, or the forged signature, or the careful smiles. The hardest part was the certainty that somewhere in the last year I had stopped being Andrew's mother and become an account, a signature, a room that cost more than it gave. I kicked off my shoes and lay sideways across the bed, still dressed. I wasn't afraid. Not yet. Fear would come later. Tonight I was only tired. The refrigerator buzzed like a train that would never stop. I watched a hairline crack in the ceiling and replayed every small kindness that had turned out to be a correction. My favorite chair moved to the garage, my fat ceramic mug replaced by a thinner, prettier one that burned my fingers, the pantry rearranged for efficiency so I could never find the salt. At dawn I made tea with the rusted kettle on the hot plate. It tasted like metal but burned the right way. The silence in that room wasn't the same as their house. Their silence watched me, waiting to fix me if I sat too long or turned the TV too high. Here there was only quiet. No judgment. Just air and a door that locked from the inside. I opened the suitcase and stared at the envelope again. Last night I hadn't had the courage to read it twice. This morning I needed to know exactly what they decided for me. The papers were neat, clipped. Copies, not originals. Maybe meant for the shredder. Maybe tucked in the drawer and forgotten. The first was a general power of attorney giving Andrew control over my financial and legal affairs, banking, property, medical decisions. Signed with my name, witnessed, notarized. It was a good fake. Not perfect, but close. I'd seen that handwriting before on birthday cards Sarah filled out for the whole family when Andrew was too busy. The same careful letters, the same tidy pressure that looked like kindness until you realized it was habit. The second was a transaction history from Andrew's investment account. Transfers from an account tagged with my old address. The one connected to the sale of my cottage. $180,000 drained in 4 months. No calls asking if I needed anything. No mom, are you comfortable? Just numbers marching away, neat as ants. The third was a draft application for a memory care residence. My name printed at the top. Age, conditions, mobility notes. One line highlighted. Patient demonstrates early signs of cognitive decline. The exact phrase Sarah used last week when I couldn't find the house keys. Maybe it's time to have your memory checked, Mom, she'd said gently, her hand on my shoulder, and I'd laughed, thinking she was teasing me. Apparently it was paperwork. I put the papers back into the envelope and set my hands in my lap. They were steady now. I was tired of shock. Tired of doubt. I didn't want revenge. Not really. What I wanted was mine. My name. My choice. My voice. At 8 I called a cab. The driver was young and polite and didn't blink when I said, "Take me to the Fairmont branch downtown." Same bank Andrew used to shepherd me through like a prop when a signature was required. He always talked to the tellers for me. He said he explained things better. The receptionist's badge said Marcy. She smiled, then faltered when she truly saw my face. "I'd like to speak with the manager," I said. "It's about a power of attorney and financial oversight." She disappeared down a carpeted hall. A man in a gray suit, mid-30s, smooth jaw, tired eyes, appeared and held out his hand. "Mrs. Jordan. I'm David. Let's go to my office." I handed him the envelope and watched him flip through the pages. His eyes slowed. His mouth pressed into a thin line. "Did you sign this power of attorney?" he asked. "No. Do you recall authorizing these transfers?" "No." "Has anyone had recent access to your accounts, acting on your behalf?" My son, I said. Andrew Jordan. David leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Mrs. Jordan, this is serious. Forging a legal document is a felony. If funds were moved without your consent, we'll need to open an internal investigation. I'm not here to press charges, I said. Not yet. I'm here to stop everything. Today. He nodded. You want to revoke the POA? Yes. Today. And freeze whatever access he has. Cancel autopays. Remove shared logins. And I want what's left moved. I took a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Into a new account in my name only. We can do that, he said. His voice was gentle, but there was steel in it. We'll do it now. For an hour we went line by line. Every payment Andrew had approved. Every form Sarah had notarized through a friend. It wasn't just theft. It was a quiet erasing. Careful, polite, soothing. When I stepped back onto the sidewalk, it was almost noon. My legs ached, my back protested, but I stood taller. For the first time in months, I belonged to myself. The city around me buzzed. Cars honking, people balancing paper cups and phones. I found a bench under an old elm across from the park and sat with my suitcase at my knees. I didn't take out the envelope. I didn't have to. I could see every word on the backs of my eyes. It wasn't about the money, not mainly. It was about the erasing. The way Sarah smiled and corrected me when I told a story at dinner. The way Andrew mentioned senior services, the first week I moved in. The way my bedroom door didn't lock. The way my mail arrived already opened. The way I hadn't gotten a birthday call from my grandson in 2 years. They thought I was fading. Easy to move. Easy to silence. Maybe I had started to believe it too until last night. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. The screen lit with Andrew's name. I stared at it, the sound drilling into the quiet like a tiny alarm. My thumb hovered. I could let it ring. I could turn it off. I could answer and hear the voice of the boy I raised speaking with the careful, practiced tone of the man who planned to lock me in. I took a breath, felt the weight of my own name sitting steady in my chest, and slid my finger across the screen. Hello, Andrew, I said. And that's where the story began to burn. The morning after felt like walking across thin glass, every step waiting for the crack. I sat in that motel room with the envelope balanced on my knees, as though it weighed more than the suitcase itself. Last night I'd only skimmed the papers. Today I forced myself to go line by line, word by word, until the letters bled into my eyes. Power of attorney. Signature not mine. Funds withdrawn. Application for memory care. Every phrase was a blade carving into me, not sharp enough to kill, but steady enough to make me bleed inside. The worst part wasn't the forgery. It wasn't even the money. It was that someone, my own son's wife, had written down in clean black ink that I was showing signs of decline. A phrase that erased every story I still remembered, every song I could hum from the radio in 1965, every book I'd read twice. One mistake with my keys and suddenly I was fading, convenient for them to say. At 8 sharp I'd called a taxi. At the bank, with David's quiet, patient voice guiding me, I cut the cord. I revoked the power of attorney. I froze the accounts. For the first time in months I felt taller. And yet, standing in the sunlight outside, suitcase handle gripped in my aching hand, I realized I had nowhere to go. I wandered a few blocks, finally sinking onto a bench beneath a tree in the park. The city bustled around me. People with paper cups, rushing late to jobs they hated, shouting into phones. And me, a 78-year-old woman with her life compressed into one suitcase and a stolen name freshly reclaimed. That was when my phone buzzed. Andrew. I let it ring twice before sliding my thumb across the screen. Hello, Andrew. My voice was even, though inside my chest shook. There was a pause. Mom? Where are you? His voice was clipped, not frantic, not worried. Calculating. I'm fine, I said. You left without telling us, Sarah's worried sick. His words fell too smoothly rehearsed. Sarah worried. The same woman who whispered about locking me in. I almost laughed, but it came out as a dry swallow. I heard you, I said simply. Silence. Then, Mom, you don't understand. Oh, I understood perfectly. I cut in. My hand gripped the phone so tight my knuckles ached. Tomorrow, you said. Tomorrow you'd lock me in. Did you think the walls were thick enough to keep a mother deaf? His breath hissed through the receiver, sharp as a struck match. It's not like that. But it was exactly like that. And the fact that he couldn't deny it outright told me everything. The line crackled. I could almost hear Sarah in the background whispering again, feeding him words like crumbs. He didn't speak until she must have finished. Come back, Mom. Please. We can talk about this. Talk. As though talk would erase signatures that weren't mine, papers planning a home I never chose, funds drained in silence. I closed my eyes, pressing my free hand against my chest. No, I said. The single word steadied me. Not this time. Before he could answer, I ended the call. My reflection stared back from the black screen. Older, lined, tired but not gone. Not erased. For the first time in months, I felt something return to me. Not joy, not yet, but something harder. Resolve. Still, the question clawed at me as I sat beneath that elm tree, suitcase at my feet. Where do I go now? The city was wide, loud, indifferent. And somewhere inside it, I would have to find a place that was mine again. But just as I stood to leave the bench, a shadow fell across me, blocking the sun. A voice said my name, my full name, like it had been waiting. And in that moment I knew the story wasn't over. Mrs. Jordan? The voice was low, careful, like it had been practiced. I looked up, squinting against the sun, and for a heartbeat I didn't recognize him. A tall man, maybe late 40s, in a gray coat too heavy for the season. His hair was slicked back, his jaw tight. Not Andrew. Not anyone I knew. But he knew me. Yes. My fingers tightened around the suitcase handle, pulling it closer to my leg like a shield. The man's eyes flicked to it, then back to me. I'm sorry to startle you. My name is Michael Turner. I work with Fairmont Bank. I saw you earlier speaking with David. The name calmed me, but only slightly. He reached into his coat, pulling out a neat business card. He held it out. His hand was steady. Mine wasn't. What do you want? I asked, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. Not here, he said softly. Can I sit? I hesitated, then nodded once. He lowered himself onto the bench, leaving a respectful gap between us. I don't mean to intrude, he began, but cases like yours, they don't come across my desk every day. Forgery. Family. Significant withdrawals. It caught my attention. The words burned. Family. My own son's name tucked into the word like a knife. I'm not pressing charges, I said quickly. I just want control back. That's all. Michael studied me for a long moment. That may not be possible if things continue as they are. Forgive me, Mrs. Jordan, but what your son and daughter-in-law have done, this is criminal. And if they've gone this far, it's unlikely they'll stop. I swallowed hard, staring down at my trembling hands. I hated that he was right. I'm not asking you to do anything today, he continued. But if you'd like protection, if you'd like to make sure your assets stay yours, I can help. Quietly. The word protection curled around me like a cloak. It sounded safe and yet dangerous at the same time. What do you mean, quietly? I asked. He leaned in, lowering his voice. Not everything has to go through the police. There are private avenues. People who specialize in making sure fraud like this doesn't happen again. People who make sure certain individuals understand the consequences. My breath caught. He didn't say the word, but I heard it anyway. Consequences. For Andrew. For Sarah. My chest ached. I was still his mother. Even after everything. Could I stomach the idea of punishment? Could I live with it? I just want my life back. I whispered, almost to myself. Michael's expression softened. And you deserve that. But you have to understand, if you walk away quietly, they might come after you again. They might even find you. A chill slid through me. As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I didn't pull it out. I already knew who it was. Andrew. Again. I closed my eyes. For one dizzy second, I imagined turning to Michael, nodding, letting him take everything from my hands. Letting someone else decide the ending of this story. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I opened my eyes and said, I need time. Michael nodded once. Of course. But don't wait too long, Mrs. Jordan. Some things get harder to undo with every passing hour. He stood, buttoned his coat, and walked away into the crowd. I watched him until he disappeared. Then I pulled out my phone. 32 missed calls. 10 voicemails. All Andrew. I didn't listen. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I stood, lifted my suitcase, and walked. Away from the bench. Away from Michael. Away from the gnawing voice in my head that whispered I might never truly be safe. But as I turned the corner onto a quieter street, I caught sight of a figure across the road. Andrew. He wasn't supposed to know where I was. And yet there he was, standing still, staring straight at me. For a moment my heart simply stopped. It was Andrew. My son. My boy who once clutched my hand so tightly, crossing the street, afraid of cars. Now he stood across the road, hands shoved in his coat pockets, his face unreadable, his eyes locked on me like a hunter who'd finally cornered his prey. I froze. The suitcase handle bit into my palm, my pulse hammering in my throat. For a moment I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was just some stranger with the same stance, the same shoulders. But then he lifted his chin in that small, impatient way of his, and I knew. It was him. Mom! His voice cut through traffic, sharper than I remembered. Not a call, not a plea, an order. Wait. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Cars passed between us, headlights flashing, and for a heartbeat I thought maybe they'd carry me away. Sweep me out of his sight like a wave dragging me back to the ocean. But no. The light changed, the cars slowed, and Andrew stepped off the curb. He crossed toward me with steady strides, no rush, no panic. Just determination. That calm terrified me more than any anger could. Mom! He said again as he stopped in front of me. He was close now, so close I could smell his cologne. The same one Sarah used to gift him every Christmas. The scent turned my stomach. You shouldn't be here, I whispered. My voice cracked. He tilted his head, studying me like I was something fragile, something misplaced. Neither should you. I tried to step back, but my legs refused. My body wanted to bolt, but my heart, God, my heart still wanted to see my son in his face, not this stranger. I know what you did, I said, forcing each word out. My throat was dry, my lips trembling. The papers. The accounts. The lies. Andrew blinked, then exhaled slowly, as though this was some minor inconvenience, as though I were a child accusing him of breaking a toy. Mom, he said softly, you don't understand. You can't handle everything anymore. Sarah and I, we were trying to protect you. Protect me? My voice rose, cutting sharper than I meant. By stealing from me? By planning to lock me away like a prisoner? He flinched at that word. Prisoner. Crack in his calm. But only for a second. Then his mouth tightened. You're making this harder than it needs to be, he muttered. You're tired. You're confused. Those papers, you don't even know what you saw. I know enough, I shot back. My voice shook, but I didn't care. I heard you. I heard Sarah. Tomorrow we'll lock her up. That's what you said. Don't lie to me. Something flickered in his eyes. Anger? Fear? Guilt? Whatever it was, it passed too quickly for me to catch. He leaned closer, lowering his voice until it was almost a hiss. Then you should have stayed quiet, Mom. The words sliced through me. My chest burned, my knees weakened, but I stood my ground. You're not my boy anymore, I whispered. You're someone else. Someone who would rather erase me than love me. For the first time, Andrew's calm cracked. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed, and his hand shot out, gripping my arm. Not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to trap me. Come home, he ordered. Now. I yanked back, clutching my suitcase tighter. No. His nostrils flared. For a heartbeat, I thought he might drag me across the street, suitcase and all, back to that house where whispers turned into plans. But then his phone buzzed in his pocket. He froze, glanced at the screen, cursed under his breath. Stay here, he barked. Don't move. And just like that, he turned and stepped away, answering the call, his voice low, urgent, sharp. I stood there, my body trembling, watching his back. The crowd moved around me, strangers brushing past, none of them knowing that my life was dangling by a thread in that moment. Could run. I could disappear into the side street just 2 blocks away. Or I could wait, confront him again, demand answers. But deep inside, a darker thought whispered. What if Michael was right? What if the only way to end this was to let someone else handle Andrew? My son's voice carried back to me, Words too muffled to catch, but the tone was enough. Cold. Ruthless. And I knew whatever he was saying, it wasn't about saving me. I didn't think. I moved. The second Andrew turned his back, my body finally obeyed the scream in my chest. I clutched my suitcase, pulled my coat tighter, and slipped into the stream of people heading down the block. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out the city noise. I half expected his hand to grab me from behind, to hear his voice snapping my name. But there was nothing. Only the rhythm of footsteps, car horns in the distance, the hammering in my ribs. I didn't stop until I ducked into a narrow alley between a bookstore and a shuttered cafe. My breath came in shallow gasps. My legs shook. I leaned against the brick wall, suitcase pressed to my side like it was a part of me. I'd done it. For now. I was out of his sight, but not out of his reach. I slid down the wall until I was crouched on the cold ground. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone. 37 missed calls now. More voicemails. Messages stacked like threats I couldn't bring myself to read. One new notification caught my eye. An email. From Michael Turner. It was short. Mrs. Jordan. If he's found you, you're not safe. Call me immediately. I can arrange protection. My throat tightened. The shadows of the alley seemed to thicken around me. My own son was hunting me. And now a stranger, a banker no less, was offering safety, protection, consequences. I closed my eyes, replaying Andrew's grip on my arm. His voice sharp and commanding. You should have stayed quiet. How many times in my life had I stayed quiet? How many times had I folded myself into silence for peace? For family? For love? Not this time. I stood, wiping the dust from my coat. The alley opened into a back street that led toward the bus terminal. A half-lit sign flickered at the end. I could go anywhere. Any city. Any place where Andrew and Sarah didn't know the corners, the benches, the faces. But I couldn't run forever. I was 78 years old. My legs ached. My hips screamed with each step. I needed more than escape. I needed power back. I pulled the phone to my ear and dialed Michael. He answered on the second ring. Mrs. Jordan? It's me, I said. My voice was thin but steady. I don't know how far he'll go. But I can't do this alone. A pause. Then softly. You won't have to. For the first time in months, a sliver of relief slipped into my chest. But before I could cling to it, I heard footsteps at the alley's mouth. Heavy. Purposeful. I froze. Turned my head. Andrew stood there, framed in the glow of a street lamp, phone pressed to his ear. His eyes found me instantly, burning with something I couldn't name. Mom, he said into the phone, his voice echoing down the alley. I told you not to move. My blood turned to ice. Michael's voice in my ear sharpened. Where are you right now? I couldn't answer. My lips parted but no sound came out. Because Andrew had started walking toward me, slow, steady, like he had all the time in the world. And in that moment I knew. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about control. About ownership. About erasing me completely. I gripped the suitcase until my knuckles went white. Every instinct screaming the same thing. Run. But this time there was nowhere left to go. Andrew's footsteps echoed against the brick walls. Each one louder than the last. Each one dragging me deeper into a corner with no way out. The alley was narrow, boxed in. The glow of the street lamp behind him cast his face in half-light. Enough to see the hard set of his jaw, the cold in his eyes. Mom, he said again, slower this time, like he was soothing a frightened animal. You don't have to do this. Just come home. I pressed my back against the wall, suitcase at my feet, phone still clutched in my hand. Michael's voice was sharp in my ear. Don't engage. Tell me where you are. I'm coming. But Andrew was too close now. If I whispered, he'd hear. If I shouted, he'd take the phone. I know what you did, I said instead, my voice shaking but loud enough to slice through the night. The papers. The money. The home you tried to steal from me. I know everything. Andrew stopped just a few feet away. His smile was small, cruel, the kind of smile I'd never seen on my son until this year. You don't know the half of it, Mom. You think you're protecting yourself, but all you're doing is making it worse. His words were smooth, rehearsed like Sarah's whispers, but the grip in his fists told a different truth. He was losing patience. I felt my knees wobble, but I forced myself to stand taller. Worse for who, Andrew? For you? His smile faltered. For a long, terrible moment, the air between us was heavy with everything unsaid. Every bedtime story, every birthday candle, every scraped knee I had once kissed better. And now this. My son staring at me like I was a problem to solve, not a mother to love. I swallowed hard. I am not your burden, I whispered. I am not your possession. I am not done. Something in his eyes flickered, rage maybe or shame. He stepped forward, hand lifting as if to grab me, to silence me once and for all. But before he could, another voice boomed from behind. Andrew Jordan. Michael. He appeared at the alley's mouth, flanked by two men I didn't recognize, broad, steady like stone pillars in dark suits. The street lamp lit their faces just enough to show they weren't here to negotiate. Andrew froze, hand still suspended in the air. Michael's voice was calm, firm. Step back. Right now. Andrew laughed bitterly. Who the hell are you? The man who knows every detail of what you forged. Every cent you stole. And the man who can make sure the law, or worse, finds you. Andrew's face twisted, but his hand dropped. He took a step back. Then another, his eyes darting from Michael to me. Mom, he said, his voice suddenly softer, almost desperate. You don't have to do this. We can fix it. We're family. Family. The word nearly broke me. Nearly. I bent down, lifted my suitcase, and looked him straight in the eye. My voice was steady this time, stronger than I thought it could be. No, Andrew. You broke it. His lips parted, but before he could speak again, Michael stepped forward, and his men closed in. Andrew's shoulders stiffened. He looked at me one last time. A mixture of fury and something I couldn't name. Something that almost looked like fear. Then he turned, pushed past Michael's men, and disappeared into the night. The alley went quiet, except for the ragged sound of my own breath. Michael approached slowly. You're safe now, Mrs. Jordan. He won't touch you again. Safe. The word felt foreign on my tongue. I wasn't sure it was true. But as I clutched my suitcase and followed Michael out of that alley, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going back. Not to Andrew's house. Not to silence. Not to being erased. For the first time in a long time, I belonged only to myself. And that, I realized, was worth everything I had left.